The anticipation on the night of February 9th, 1964 had reached a fever pitch. Approximately 73 million viewers were tuned in to catch the Beatles' first televised performance in the USA on The Ed Sullivan Show. When the cameras cut from the jowly old host to Paul McCartney, John Lennon, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr performing All My Loving, a new era of music began. College student and aspiring folk musician Michael Nesmith was watching. "I just went out of my head with it like everybody else," he recalled. Nesmith couldn't have imagined that 3 years and a day later he would be a pop star standing in Abbey Road studios watching the Beatles record their masterpiece, A Day in the Life. Downtown from the Ed Sullivan Theater, another aspiring folk performer, they were a dime a dozen thanks to Bob Dylan, was plying his trade at Pass the Basket clubs in Greenwich Village. Geographically, the glitzy world of the Sullivan Show was only a few subway stops away, but philosophically, to a folk purist like Peter Tork, it might as well have been a million miles. Only a few years later, Tork would be strumming a 5-string banjo on the soundtrack to George Harrison's film Wonderwall. Micky Dolenz had no purist folk tendencies. In his spare time, he was a greasy-haired lead singer in a 5-piece rock and roll cover band named the Missing Links. After seeing the Fab Four perform, like a lot of young American males, Dolenz put away the pomade and got himself a Beatle haircut. A decade later, he was partying hard with a gang of rock stars nicknamed the Hollywood Vampires, whose inner circle included John Lennon and Ringo Starr. One future Monkee was on the scene at the Ed Sullivan Theater that night. In between the Beatles' historic performances on the show, an elfin 19-year-old Davy Jones, in the role of the Artful Dodger, performed I'd Do Anything with the cast of the hit Broadway musical Oliver. After being thoroughly eclipsed by his fellow countrymen, Jones watched backstage with a mix of envy and awe. Later, he recalled thinking, "I want a bit of this. This is good." All over America, young male musicians were doing the same calculation. How could they get some of that Beatles action? Seemingly overnight, from basements and garages, bands minted in the image and sound of the world's favorite Liverpudlians began emerging, but none shared the group's visionary grasp of musical possibilities. The Beatles phenomenon traveled at warp speed. A mere 6 months after the Ed Sullivan Show, the group's first full-length motion picture, A Hard Day's Night, was released. This surrealistic account of life inside the bubble of a pop phenomenon, directed by Richard Lester, was a box-office sensation as well as a major influence on emerging filmmakers, including the 2 creators of the Monkees, Bob Rafelson and Bert Schneider. Thanks to A Hard Day's Night, Rafelson's pet project, a weekly TV show chronicling the misadventures of 4 genial musicians, suddenly had a much greater chance of being sold to network television.